This woman walked into Antiques Roadshow carrying an object that had been sitting in her living room for decades, and within minutes, experts realized it shouldn't even exist. Clark Een thought he'd already seen everything his job could throw at him. Decades of rare objects, priceless artifacts, and unexpected finds had passed through his hands. But one quiet moment during an early 2002 episode of Antiques Roadshow completely caught him off guard, and he still talks about it years later. What looked like a routine appraisal instantly changed when a woman stepped forward carrying a stone lion statue. The second his eyes locked onto it, something felt different. This wasn't just another decorative piece. Clark had spent his life studying antiques, especially Chinese art, and his instincts were already firing before he even touched it. Pieces like this don't just appear out of nowhere. His first question came naturally. Where did it come from? The answer, however, wasn't simple. The woman explained calmly that the statue had been in her family for generations. Her grandparents had picked it up while traveling in China sometime in the early 1900s. After that, it moved from one home to another, passed down quietly, never locked in a vault, never displayed behind glass. Eventually, it ended up with her, sitting casually in the corner of her living room. She had even given it a nickname, Leo the Lion. As she spoke, Clark leaned closer, carefully studying the surface. The longer he looked, the more emotional he became. He tried to stay professional, but the historian in him was clearly overwhelmed. Finally, he said something that stunned everyone nearby. This wasn't just rare. It was one of the finest examples of Chinese sculpture he had ever seen on the show. At first glance, it might have looked like an ordinary lion to an untrained eye, but Clark pointed out the tiny details carved into its sides, the precision, the balance, the subtle expressions that only a true master could create. This level of craftsmanship wasn't common. In fact, it was almost unheard of. And then came the realization that made the moment even heavier. He explained that small versions of similar statues had appeared on the market from time to time, but nothing even close to this size or quality had ever surfaced intact. Pieces like this were believed to exist only in fragments, if at all. Most had been damaged, broken, or lost to history. Yet this one looked almost untouched. That alone was shocking. Ancient statues rarely survive centuries without cracks, chips, or repairs. But Leo showed almost none of that. Clark admitted it was incredible to see something this old preserved so perfectly. Still, the owner didn't expect much. There was one detail she believed would lower its value. The statue wasn't signed. She mentioned it almost apologetically, assuming it would hurt the appraisal. But Clark immediately reassured her. These pieces were never signed. That wasn't unusual at all. Someone had once told her it likely came from the Ming Dynasty, which would already make it extremely valuable. But Clark barely needed a moment to know that wasn't right. And that's when the atmosphere changed completely. This statue wasn't Ming Dynasty. It was far older. Clark explained that the lion dated back to the Tang Dynasty, a golden era of Chinese art that spanned from the 6th to the 9th century. Just hearing those dates put things into perspective. This wasn't just old, it was ancient. The Tang Dynasty is considered one of the most influential periods in Chinese history, a time when art, literature, music, and sculpture flourished like never before. Some of the most iconic works China has ever produced came from that era, and somehow, this lion had survived it all. To understand just how special Leo was, Clark compared it to the famous Longmen Grotto's massive cave systems, filled with Buddhist carvings from the same period. Now protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, experts consider those caves an outstanding example of human creativity, and Leo the lion was carved during that exact same time. When word spread, the statue quickly became legendary within the Antiques Roadshow world. The show's editor-in-chief later called it one of the most important objects ever, featured possibly the most important. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Clark finally shared the value. At auction, he said, the statue could easily bring between $120,000 and $180,000. But that wasn't the full picture. For insurance purposes, he estimated it would realistically fall between $150,000 and $250,000, and likely toward the higher end. An 18-inch statue that had been sitting quietly in a living room, potentially worth $250,000. And that was back in 2002. Some experts even believed it was undervalued at the time, and that its worth today could be far higher. Naturally, people assumed the owner would sell it immediately. Who wouldn't? But that never happened. Years later, it was revealed that she hadn't come to the show to cash in. She only wanted to understand what she had. Despite Clark's emotional belief that the statue belonged in a museum, she took Leo right back home, right back to the same spot in her living room. And that's where it stayed. Not behind glass, not under security, just quietly waiting to be passed down to the next generation, exactly as it had been for over a century. Sometimes, the most valuable treasures aren't locked away or hidden underground. Sometimes, they're right there in plain sight, unnoticed for generations,